get things going. So thanks very much for joining us. Ryan Hefford, thanks very much for spending your time with us today. We really appreciate it and very interested to see what aspects on the digital transformation is having on music and what it's going to look like from here on out. First, I'd just like to recognize and acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands that have been inhabited by the Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. This recognition is also clearly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. Again, thank you very much for joining us. I'll turn the floor over to Ryan, who is self-elected to introduce himself. Yeah. So we don't have to read off his bio. Thanks very much, everybody. Enjoy the session. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, so it's good to see everyone's face. I'm Ryan Hefford. I will maybe read off my own bio a bit anyway. Just to give you an idea of who I am. I am an artist manager. Specifically, I'm the artist manager in charge of development at the Management Trust. So that kind of means of our bigger clients, I handle the day-to-day management, organizing their lives, organizing their social media, and fixing things that need to be fixed. And as well, I handle the big picture management of our developing clients. So we're working with a band called The Tales, as well as some muralists, as you may know, who are coming up to participate in the Mural Festival this June. And a new client, we just signed Ethan Sermon. And obviously the bigger clients, I handle the Tragically Hip and Gord Downey, my boss, Jake Gold, of course, responsible for bringing the hip to fruition over many, many years, and then being a judge on Canadian Idol and stuff. So the Management Trust has quite a bit of experience here. I'm an honors graduate of the Harris Institute of Arts Management program, where I've taught as well since 2018, and independently and through the Management Trust, I provide arts management and consulting services to musicians, festival talent buyers, visual artists, muralists, producers, etc. So I kind of run the whole gambit in terms of artist management. So I want to talk to you a bit. Obviously, the topic of this is kind of digital music business. The way I've formatted this is kind of, as I'm sure everyone kind of has PowerPoint and Zoom burnout at this point. I'll be sharing my screen at a couple points with some visual things I want to show you, some different web pages and stuff. But I kind of just want to go through my notes here and touch on a couple topics, and then field questions from you guys, because I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. And we'll try and make this really kind of discussion based. So as well, if anyone has questions throughout, just interrupt me. Just raise your hand with the raise hand button, or if I don't notice it, someone just kind of yell at me and I'll get the picture. So let's get into it. Yeah. I'll move over to my notes here. I want to start by going through a couple things, like just a couple realities and a couple of the numbers of what the music business looks like today. So in 2017, the big three record labels made an estimated $14.2 million a day from streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music. And the industry term for those services would be a DSP, digital streaming platform. Universal Music Group alone made $4.5 million each day from streaming in 2017. So in 2020, as of the end of that last quarter, UMG had cleared $8 billion in revenue, Warner $4.4 billion in revenue, Sony Music $4.5 billion in revenue. What's interesting to note about those numbers is obviously that these are massive global corporations. What's interesting to note about those numbers is I'm sure you've all heard this figure that the average royalty payout from streaming services is only 0.006 cents. So, well, that's low, and while you might hear a lot of people, complaining is the wrong word, but kind of sounding the alarm that that's quite low. Obviously, there's money in this world. And something else important to note, I think, is that it's not just the big companies either. Independent artists collectively in 2017 made $452 million from streaming, and independent record labels collectively made $3.5 billion from streaming. So a collective of independent record labels globally is reaching up there with the best of the major labels. If we go through and kind of look at some of the realities of these numbers, there's two figures I like to pick out here. The first being how many streams does it take to make minimum wage, and how many streams is it to get a platinum record? So that first figure, what's minimum wage now? I think it's $14.25, but I actually have 15 written down here. So we'll go with 15. If we divide 15 by 0.006 cents, so that's 2,500 streams to make $15, 1 hour of minimum wage. So if it takes 40 hours of labor, let's say, to complete a market competitive recording between, pre-production, production, overdubbing, vocal recording, the mixing, the mastering, that kind of thing, and we times 40 times 2,500, that's about 100,000 streams to kind of make your minimum wage. So it's an interesting figure to note. The other point, according to the RIAA, which is the Record Industry Association of America, and again, this figure is as of 2017, I'm 99% certain it hasn't changed. 1,500 streams equals 1 album sale in terms of charting. So if an American platinum record is 1 million album sales times 1,500, you need 1.5 billion streams to get a platinum record. It seems like a lot. And I will share my screen for a second. To demonstrate whether or not this is equitable, I'd like to show you two examples here. The first is I had Taylor Swift, Blank Space, pulled up, which is obviously a big hit from 2014. On YouTube, her views alone, so streams, are 2.7 billion. And you've got to imagine that if we add Spotify in there, if we add Apple Music and Amazon in there, we must be approaching 5 billion. So you can see how it's equitable that a big artist like Taylor Swift, who you would expect to have platinum records, probably went 3-4 times platinum on this record. And again, if we go over to The Weeknd, Blinding Lights, big hit of last year. He currently, what's that number, 470 million on YouTube. So if we add in concurrently over a year, Spotify and Apple Music, he's probably gone 1 times platinum on that record by now. So while these numbers seem inflated and they seem unattainable to an independent artist, I just use this to illustrate that in the grander scheme of what it is, they're more equitable than you might think. And I'd kind of like to pose a question to you guys. How many people here, just kind of by nodding of heads, maybe you can interject with some anecdotes of your own. How many people here have heard from members of their local community or musicians or online through the press that Spotify doesn't pay royalties fairly? Yeah, everyone's heard that. Does anyone kind of have a personal anecdote about that? I'm curious kind of what you're hearing from the community there.
I've heard things like if you added up like Justin Bieber's sales, it would equal like $5,000 or I mean, sorry, his streams. Like it adds up to some ridiculously low amount or something. I don't know. I've heard some shocking statistic.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is I think those kind of figures are purposely shocking. There's agendas at play. I mean, to circle back, Justin Bieber is on Universal Music. Universal Music made $8 billion in 2020. I don't think I know for a fact, based on the royalties we get from some of our larger clients, that Justin Bieber's getting paid.
Yeah, but
There's
the way I've understood it is that Spotify made great deals with record companies, and the royalties they pay record companies, but not necessarily the deals that they make with the artist directly. And that was the reason they had access to all the record company library, maybe something along those lines.
It is partially true. I'd like to, what I'd kind of like to point out here is that Spotify's paid subscribers in 2020 hit 155 million at the end of the last quarter of 2020. So that was only in December that they hit 155 million paid subscribers. That's up 24% year on year. And it compares to the last declared figure from Apple Music, which is 60 million. The total monthly active Spotify users, which include people on their free ad-funded tier, reached 345 million. So again, a year-on-year increase of 27%. But the average revenue per user for the subscription business fell 8% to, obviously Spotify being a European company, fell 8% to 4.26 euros. So that's about $5.15 USD, I'm fairly sure. So maybe $5.75 Canadian. And obviously Spotify's paid tier in the US and Canada is $9.99. So what that shows us is that they're taking an average loss of about 50%. It's not taking into account the fact that a lot of that figure is probably drawn down a bit by their efforts to pull in new subscribers in India and in Russia, for example, where they're offering things at discounted and lower prices. But it is important to note that Spotify is losing money hand over fist. So I remember.
That's insane. That's incredible. Yeah. Hey, just I know. Hey, what kind of I've been curious to know what kind of royalty rate Apple Music is compared to Spotify. Do you happen to know?
I think it's a little lower. Apple is a lot less
lower.
transparent.
Wow. I thought it'd be higher. Okay.
The thing about Apple Music is it's of no benefit of them to share any information.
What about iTunes? I mean, is that still a significant revenue earner? No. Okay.
Yeah, that's out for sure. Apple Music, again, when we say Spotify is losing money hand over fist,
that's just insane.
We're sure it's the same thing with Apple Music, but they're less transparent about it. We know for a fact that for Apple, music is definitely a loss leader. The whole point of Apple Music for Apple is simply to lock people into their ecosystem, right?
Right.
So get people on Apple Music and it pulls them in, and then they get Apple TV, and then they keep buying Apple devices, etc. Right? So, I mean, if you look back, it was a couple months ago. Time flies in lockdown. It might have been longer than that. It might have been less. There was that big story about Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, kind of said laid out some harsh realities in the press for artists about how artists were he used some harsh words. They were being whiny and they weren't utilizing the tools properly. And everyone kind of fired back at him because they said, well, Spotify, you're this $1 billion company and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, on paper, they're $1 billion company. In reality, they are losing a lot of money. So And what he was right about was that Spotify isn't necessarily underpaying artists. Artists are misusing Spotify. This is definitely among a much more complicated set of issues, but what you see a lot of
Ryan, say that again. Say what you just said. They're not.
Spotify isn't necessarily underpaying artists. The reality is artists are misusing Spotify.
Are misusing Spotify.
Yeah. What you see a lot of independent artists doing, and developing artists and young artists, they kind of just throw their stuff up on Spotify. They distribute it through CD Baby and they put it up there, or DistroKid or whatever, and they do some promotion on their social media, but they're not utilizing the Spotify or the Apple Music ecosystem in a way that allows them to actually generate the streams required to make revenue. So they're not playlisting, they're not promoting properly, they're not using paid ad buys, etc. Right? Is everyone familiar with the concept of playlisting?
No, explain it. I mean, I don't. You mean how it can generate money?
Well, just the concept of
I mean, I know how you do it on Spotify, but I
Yeah.
mean, you mean that there's a trick to this of how it can generate revenue?
Well, no. I'll start at the beginning here, just in case anyone is not aware. Like on the Spotify platform and on Apple Music and Amazon Music, they have what's called editorial playlists. So when you're on Spotify, you'll see, maybe I'll share my screen just for anyone who is not fully aware. Spotify has these playlists that they curate and they put songs in them, right? And they have hundreds of thousands of followers on these particular playlists. This is one example. This would be another example. Some of these are my examples. I'm trying to find another one. This is another Spotify example. See, 655,000 followers. They basically curate. They're curating new music, and they're making it easily accessible to listeners. And that's their whole shtick, right? The idea that streaming is kind of the new radio. People just put it on and play in the background. So the key to getting streams that reach monetizable numbers is getting on these playlists. The same way where the key to generating audience and revenue 20 years ago might have been getting on radio. That's kind of the general idea. What a lot of artists are missing is they either don't understand how to get on these playlists, or they do understand how to get on these playlists, but they don't necessarily curate an image in the way that's conducive to getting on these playlists.
How about you explain how an artist gets onto these playlists? Because that's obviously getting on somebody that has a playlist with lots of followers.
Yeah.
And
so Spotify, in the Spotify for Artists platform, has they have an editorial pitch tool where once your song has been distributed to Spotify, when you're in your Spotify for Artists backend, you can pitch the song. So it's a fairly simple idea. The point that a lot of artists are missing here, and the reason they're not getting playlists, and what I want to narrow in on is, I think Spotify has like 2 or 3 people curating all these playlists for the entire country. In the States, they maybe have a 20, 25 person team doing it for all these playlists. So you can imagine the backlog of music they're pitched every day. So what I want to narrow in on is how can we really curate a coherent brand that will look professional from the start and kind of catch people's eye a bit. And this is kind of the first step to properly playlisting. The catch-22 of music being obviously that people only listen to music that's been validated to them by others. So bloggers only want articles that other people are buzzing about, etc. I'm sure in your personal life, you've experienced this too. Like you try and show someone a song and they don't really care because they've never heard of it before. Some people are worse for that than others, but if you have a brand that looks pro from the start, or an image that looks pro from the start, you can really set yourself a step ahead of that. And to give you some examples here of what that might look like, without getting into it too much, because I'm trying to save the good stuff for in June when I come in person. But if we pull up, let me pull up the web page here. I'll use some examples of our clients and some examples of other clients. This is Gord Downey's solo stuff. This is his website, right? If I open all of our social media pages, the Bandcamp, YouTube, and go through them, what do you see, right? Everything is consistent. The profile pictures are the same. All the art is the same. The bio lines, right? The Instagram has a coherent feel. Facebook, again, same profile picture, same art. All the information is clean and concise. Again, I'll show you an example here with some of our bigger clients, like the hip itself. If we, let me close all these. thehip.com. And we open their socials. We'll open their Spotify too. You can again see it's all the same logos, right? Same similar photos. Everything is clean and concise, right? And to use an example of a different artist, perhaps, I have Deadmau5 pulled up here. If we go to his website, everything is consistent. What this shows to fans is just that there's a coherent image and it's something they can instantly identify. What it shows to people in the industry and these people who might be curating your songs into some of these playlists is that you have a coherent brand. And these people want to support artists who have their shit together, for lack of a better term. So it's just important to kind of go through these things, and I will get into a bit kind of how we can do that more in the in-person workshop I did, but it's just something I wanted to bring up before moving on to this next point here, which is how the industry places values on streams and engagement numbers. So we know that they do. We know that they want to see these coherent imaging pieces. We know that all has to be there. Now the question would be why, right? So record labels, booking agents, managers, they only want to be involved if their share is worth it. It's just the reality. These people are business people. They need to make money. 2 million streams is kind of the starting point to monetization. So that's something smart management could make a profit off of. That's something record labels could take a cut from. That's a point where you could get booking agents involved because they're interested in the fact that you're building a real audience. To speak specifically to the booking agency thing and the touring thing, obviously when you're in the back end of these DSPs, specifically Spotify, you can pick out exactly what cities your listeners are in. And if you have a significant data set, that's something you could build a tour on. So if you have 10 million streams, it can pick out where are the most people listening? Toronto, Montreal, etc., and start building a tour out that way.
So Ryan, just using what you had said before about the number of streams that equal the number of albums. So 2 million as a base level is realistically, when you think about it, is only 1,300 albums. Like really, so for an independent artist, that's a reasonable and achievable goal.
And that's kind of the point I was hoping people would conclude from this is exactly that. I know when you hear the number 2 million, you kind of, it seems like a lot, but when you break it down like this and you understand, how do we reach that? We playlist. How do we playlist? We need to be coherent with our imaging and the music. It starts to become more attainable. So once, and again, the higher your numbers on social media and DSPs, the more engaged industry professionals will want to become. And from there, that's when things start to happen, right? Once we kind of understand this, we only really need to understand two other core principles of monetization. One is technical and one is more of my own management philosophy. The first is metadata and what the different revenue sources are from streaming. And that kind of starts with music copyright. A lot of artists don't understand how music is copyrighted. There's no lawyer, there's no overarching government organization. There's really none of that. The way intellectual property copyright works is simply establishing first use. So there's two types of copyright in music. The first being phonographic, which is the actual master mechanical recording of something. And the second would be copyright, the written musical material. So the lyrics, the sheet music, that kind of thing. And just to kind of give a real world example of that, if I wanted to record a cover of Michael Jackson's Thriller, I would need permission to use the copyright. If I wanted to use the recording of Michael Jackson's Thriller in an advertisement, I would need both the copyright and the phonographic copyright, because I'm trying to use the original master as well as the written material contained within it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I mean, Ryan, but
Yeah.
so master rights are phonographic in old school talk, and like basically copyright is the publishing side of music.
Exactly. Yeah. Phonographic copyright is the masters. Copyright is publishing. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And again, like I said, the way you establish that is really simple. It's just first use. So again, if I share my screen here, I'll pull up Spotify. You'll notice on a whole bunch of tracks, well, not a whole bunch, on all of them, at the bottom of any release, and this is consistent over all DSPs, as well as you'll see this on the back of CDs. You'll see here, CP 2021 Grimes Creative Corporation under exclusive license to their distribution label, obviously Crystal Math Music. So when this was distributed to Spotify, they simply told Spotify, this is who owns the copyright. And when it was distributed and released, they have now established the copyright. So going forward, forever and ever, amen. Because this has been distributed in so many places, because they have a physical copy that shows the year, that shows who owns it, going forward, if anyone tried to rip off any of these songs, they could reference back to this. And that's really it. Once we kind of understand that, we can get into categorizing our metadata and getting paid for our streams, right? So, oh, someone entered the waiting room. Should I let them in?
Yeah, I'm letting them in.
Do it. I'm gonna roll the dice.
Did you let them in?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I just did. Yeah. I'm going to show you an infographic here, actually, which was made by my pal Andrew at Rax. So there's five primary kind of ways to get paid off recorded music and off your royalties and off your publishing. The primaries is the songwriter via SOCAN, and that's your primary publishing revenue. The other two are kind of a little more complex. They're called neighboring rights. Neighboring rights is a way that masters owners, so people who own those phonographic recordings, as well as performers on a record, get paid, right? And again, all this revenue is being generated. It's paid to these different organizations by DSPs like Spotify, etc. And these distributions pay out to their members. So there's SOCAN. On the performer side, there's actual racks. On the masters owner side, there's Connect, right? So in Canada, if you sign up for all of these, there's also the CMRRA, which is mechanical publishing. So it's a similar thing. So the point being, if you're registered for all of these organizations, plus you're getting paid masters royalties from CD Baby, DistroKid, your label, whoever distributed the music, you're now collecting all possible royalties. And I could get in, I could spend 3 hours explaining to you how all these people pull money and where they're pulling money from and that kind of thing. But the point I'm really just trying to hammer home is when you release music, you want to register it with SOCAN, you want to register it with the CMRRA, at your racks, Connect, and you want to be getting your master's royalties, and then you're covered.
Hey, Ryan, just one more, just give the quick definition of neighboring rights again.
Yeah, neighboring rights is, so neighboring rights kind of came about as this idea that publishers were getting paid on the publishing copyright of music, but people who performed and masters owners weren't getting paid royalties. So it was kind of just set up as a way to split that revenue equitably among all those different people. And neighboring rights is just royalties due from distribution of music to, on the performer's side, the performer obviously, and then on the master's side, the owner of the phonographic recording.
Yeah, I got it. So it's paying the performer from royalty, right? Okay, from record royalties and publishing. Okay. Got it.
I know this is a lot of information, and I'm going to try and go again. I don't know if anyone plans on attending the in-person workshop I'm going to do later in the year, but
in June, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll try and go more in depth. I'm just trying to carpet bomb as much of the important points as possible right now. So you understand how these different organizations are tracking your royalties. There's 3 primary components to this. There's the ISRC, the International Standard Recording Code, which is assigned by your distributor or by Connect Music if you don't have a distributor. And that's just a code that tracks master play internationally. There's the UPC, which tracks specifically mechanical sales. There's the ISWC, which you get through SOCAN when you register your song.
Ryan, one more time, go through those again. There's the ISRC, the what?
The ISRC, the International Standard Recording Code. The UPC, which is a barcode, which you see on every product ever.
Right.
And there's the ISWC, which is an International Standard Writing Code, similar in function to an ISRC, but it handles the copyright, not the phonographic.
Got it. Right.
And you get the ISWC from SOCAN, and you get the ISRC from your distributor or from Connect Music. And you'll use those across the board, all those organizations I just mentioned, SOCAN, the CMRA, ActRax, etc., will all ask for that information. And then they go to the DSPs, the Spotify, the Apple Music, and they use those codes to search through the data and figure out how much of what got played, and that's how you get paid. So it's really important. I implore you to look into it a bit. If anyone wants, actually, can I share attachments in the chat? This is a really, really helpful infographic because this is seriously a lot of information.
Great.
But if you go through that infographic, you'll be covered. There's other points, like there's, for example, there's Sound Exchange in the US, and you can get kind of complicated, and maybe you want to collect US dollars if you're getting a lot of airplay on Sirius XM, things like that. But in general, ActRax has a reciprocal agreement there. So starting out, if you're just trying to wrap your head around this, that infographics a really good jumping off point. And the second part is more of my own management philosophy. The second thing we need to understand here. Is anyone familiar with the concept of 1,000 true fans? You might have heard that around. Yeah, some people nodding their heads. Yeah, the idea that you only need 1,000 really, really engaged people to make a living. Obviously, if you have 1,000 people who buy every t-shirt you make, that adds up. If you have 1,000 people who come to your local show every 3 months, that can add up. And again, let's break that down. 1,000 true fans. How do you get 1,000 true fans? Well, to use a streaming funnel, if you get 100,000 plays on a song, so let's say you playlisted successfully, you went through the process, you did all those things I talked about a little further up. You got about 100,000 plays on that song. At about a 0.5% conversion rate, which I'd say is probably realistic, 500 of those people loved your song, heard it in passing, heard it on one of their playlists, got engaged, went the step further and followed you on social media. Let's say of those 500 people, 10% of them actually became really engaged fans. I'd say that's probably pretty conservative. So now you have 50 super fans. If you divide 1,000 by 50, you'll see you need roughly 20 releases with about 100,000 plays to cultivate a core audience of 1,000 super fans. And I could pull up some examples here of different artists, kind of developing artists. What's a good one? Even Gord Downie. Sorry, I shouldn't swear on the recording here. It's a bad habit. I'll pull up Gord Downie because I'm intimately, I know it intimately here. Share screen. Gord Downie, so you understand, is traditionally, obviously a very iconic artist, and through the hip, he's the biggest in the country. His solo stuff, for whatever reason, doesn't perform in the same way. That doesn't mean Gord Downie is not a revenue driver. That doesn't mean that Gord Downie is not an artist who we can make money off streams from, etc. Right? And it doesn't mean he wasn't an artist who, when he was alive, wasn't selling tickets to his solo show. And to use an example here, a lot of these top tracks right now, 315,000 streams, 215,000, right? If we go down the list, there's about, what is that, 10, 15 that are breaching that 100,000 streams mark, right? So just to illustrate the point that we probably have 1,000 true Gord Downie fans. And for us, we've seen fiscal success from that. So when you break it down that way, it starts to become a little easier to digest. And again, this is the point when a label, a booking agent, and other industry parties, they'll become interested. This is the point when you're monetizable. Whether we live in an analog or a digital world, the philosophy of building and serving a core audience rings true here. Digital platforms provide us with a wide net to cast on an audience with the objective of stringing a few along for the long haul. So the net is playlisting and radio, building a story through press, social sharing. These are always and always will be core principles of artist management. An authentic artist can convert that audience into purchases of tickets, merchandise, and content. By authentic, I mean an artist who doesn't ask these things of an audience up front. Someone who genuinely engages with their audience, builds a community. And if these things are happening, it'll be clear how you monetize your work. It'll be clear how to make a living, because the audience is going to start asking you. They're going to start saying, when's the next show? They're going to start saying, we want a t-shirt, right? Again, I could speak on various things for many hours. I'm trying to carpet bomb a bit here. The topic of this was digital music business and what that looks like. What I'm really trying to illustrate and have everyone take away from this is that there's really no simple answer. The only golden rule here is just find your community, wherever that is, whether that's online, that could be Reddit, that could be Instagram. If it's in person, it could be specific venues. Engage with it and give yourself and your art to it. The rest, the monetization, will come a lot more naturally than you think. I think that's it. I think that's everything I wanted to say.
I got to tell you, this is incredible information. I think I'm speaking on behalf of everybody here. Yeah, I can see these are questions I've had for a long time. Everybody has. How do you turn this all into revenue? This has probably been the most insightful explanation I've ever heard.
Good. I'm glad.
Ryan, come up and do this workshop in June and expand on this, because this is what it's all about right now. This is the big gray area, or the black hole that everyone wants to doesn't want to fall down, or wants to fall down. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but this is incredible, man. I don't know if I'm sure lots of people have questions, so go ahead.
I would love to take questions. Yeah. If anyone wants to just jump in and raise their hand, just go ahead.
Yeah, one question.
Okay. I was just going to say less a question, more a comment. I was just going to say, I think what I liked about what you're saying is you kind of broke it down into sort of manageable pieces. Here are the components and here are the pieces. And I think that's what a lot of artists, they tend to get overwhelmed because it all feels like too much. But when you break it down to components and you start translating things, and you start talking apples to apples rather than apples to oranges, it makes a lot more sense. And, it gives sort of some achievable steps that people can take. So thanks for that.
I think that's important. Yeah, that's the key of it. Chris, I think you were had a question.
Yeah, just I'm wondering if there's any more developments. I know Music Canada was, and I think it was probably 2009. It was definitely before. Well, it was definitely before COVID. It was like 2019. They were addressing the. Everybody has that ring. They were addressing the fact that YouTube. Okay, so in comparison, YouTube, in comparison to say number of streams for music, basically has more music streaming than if you were going to take every single digital streaming platform combined and combine them all together. YouTube's still greater in terms of music streams, yet they're not paying the piper for on the other side of things. And if they were to even make, and this is a monster company making more money than you said, Spotify, other companies are losing money. Google is not, and so they are making money hand over fist on music. And actually, you look at even other bands. There's lots of Canadian bands that you see that you have these phantom channels set up, and they have tons of views and just people just making money on advertising, not the artist, just some guy.
Yeah.
Are there any developments that you know of in that area? Because that seems to be the big culprit. That when you're talking about some form of, and I know Music Canada was addressing this, but that seems to be the big fish that, and this isn't, this has got to come from the federal government rather than, a label.
To me, the obvious problem is that YouTube is making a lot of money, and they are the biggest driver of streams. I think that's because YouTube is accessible, because it's free, and everyone in the world has YouTube. Obviously everyone in the world has Google, right? YouTube is having a really, really hard time converting people to their paid tier. So there is advertising revenue there, but the reality is, first, that advertising revenue is not just being split amongst artists. And they've gotten better about categorizing this stuff over the last couple of years, but that advertising revenue is being split amongst, musicians, content creators, people making videos, all sorts of people. There's a lot more people trying to get a piece of that pie. And YouTube in the past couple of years has really been trying to build out their YouTube music platform. But they're having a really hard time converting people to paid subscribers via YouTube Premium. I don't know if anyone's kind of looked at those different tiers they offer. Because all YouTube Premium really offers is an ad-free experience and the ability to listen to a YouTube video in the background, like on your phone. So you can lock your phone screen and continue to listen to music in the background. And for a platform that's been around since 2005, where everyone is just used to the ads, I think the general public consensus that they're struggling with is that a lot of people don't see the value. They just see a premium tier as a cash grab and less as.
And I'll add too that I think didn't YouTube just announce, didn't they just up the minimum amount of streams you need before you're even allowed to make money off advertising? They've really shifted it like a considerable difference now. You used to be able to make money as a nobody on there from getting 100,000 streams. Now you have to hit 100,000 or more to even qualify or something.
Because they simply don't have the money to pay out that money. Right? So the threshold has to be a lot higher. It's something I know they're working on. Like as a company, I know they're aware of it. They have people in their office here in Toronto who are working on developing this. The frustrating part is there's only 3 of them. I know all 3 of these guys, and they're overworked. I don't know if they're underpaid, but they're overworked. So it is what it is. Yeah. Yeah. Does that kind of give some insight? Yeah. Cool. Sure. Does anyone else have questions?
Yes, I have one.
Hey, yeah. Sure.
I wanted to ask you, when you were talking about getting on the Spotify playlist, you mentioned that you should have a professional brand. And what's the next step after I have a professional brand?
Like the next step beyond that would simply be going through and trying the playlist, right? Like why I mentioned the branding thing is more just to illustrate the point that in a world where there's lots of noise, you want to give yourself an opportunity to really put your best foot forward. because when you're presenting your music through these editorial to be pitched to these editorial playlists, you want it to look as best as it can, right? And I think I mentioned to Greg earlier in the conversation, yeah, like once the music has been distributed to Spotify, for example, all you have to do to pitch to these playlists is simply go into Spotify for Artists, and it's like front and center. They have a pitch this tool to editorial, or pitch this song to editorial tool.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Ryan,
kind of go from there.
Ryan, the thing you posted, the Canadian royalties infographic, do you have any other links you could share with us that are addressing the subjects you've been talking about?
Let me pull up my notes here. I think
Or send them to us on email, and I'll
I
post
think,
them.
yeah, if I have everyone's email in that calendar invite, maybe I can pull some stuff together, like some
That would be tremendously helpful. Again, this is
yeah.
this is an education for all of us. It's new, and we're all thirsty.
Yeah, I can definitely give me the afternoon, pull some stuff together, and I can email everyone in that calendar invite.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, just jumping in there, the workshops in June, like this is what these workshops are all about. So we're hoping that you guys start spreading the word now to come, because Ryan's head is full of all kinds of useful information. So that hopefully we can get him up.
I'd like to put it to use.
Yeah. So anything that, we'll put some out there now, and then like anything that's missed, or, I've talked a little with Ryan, and I don't know by far the ins and outs of any of this stuff, but Ryan's been able to explain it to me being an outsider, and I actually get it. So I think like there's going to be a ton of benefit for people to come and participate in this.
And to add to that, Todd, Ryan will be the first of many workshops we plan to have throughout next year. Obviously, once the dreaded COVID leaves our lives.
Yeah.
But you can just see right here, this alone, how educational this is. And yes, like what Todd said, please spread the word, because the more they're supported, the more we can keep getting funding for them.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's a really cool opportunity. I just want to say thanks, Ryan. That's a lot of great information, and it's so refreshing to hear somebody like deconstruct Spotify with a business mindset versus just complaining about it. Because that's all you ever get.
I heard so many people complaining about it, and I was like, well, let's really figure this out. And I think I'm glad you guys found that helpful too.
100%. Great information. And thanks for the royalties information as well. I literally wasn't aware that as a performer, you could collect royalties.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think that was a royalty area.
That's something that SOCAN will pay out as well as a performer.
No,
Really?
I don't.
No?
I think SOCAN. I think the idea.
Sorry, doesn't SOCAN collect on performances?
Yeah, so that's probably what it is. So performance royalties on SOCAN are like, performance royalties would be
It's kind of part of publishing, right?
If your music gets played in a live performance, if your music
Yeah, right.
on a television show, that kind of thing. The performer royalties that Actor Rax pays out is literally like royalties due to the performer,
okay.
rather than the performance of the music. Yeah.
So Dustin, you may have some neighboring rights royalties sitting out there for you.
Well, I've been a session player on close to every recording I've ever made. So
well, that's a good question, Ryan. Is any of this stuff retroactive?
It is retroactive. How retroactive, I think, varies per organization. I think Actor Rax is retroactive up to 7 years.
There you go.
So it's worth looking into.
Yeah.
That's great.
Definitely worth looking into. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions?
That's great.
Oh, but we are at the almost at the 1 hour mark. So,
We can, if everyone is good, then I guess we can wrap it up. But
Yeah.
if anyone has questions, feel free to email me. My email will be on my calendar invite. I'll get back as quickly as I can, and we can go from there. And I'll be up in June. I'm sure you'll hear through different community channels when and where that is, and we can expand on this some more.
Thanks, Ryan. Hey, Jay, that looks like a really comfortable chair you're sitting in.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Ryan. Looking forward to June.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah.
guys.